So I had this idea about 3 o'clock in the morning when we do all of our best thinking about using a time and space each week which would be completely protected, where teachers could work with their year groups and they could work from home as they chose to. And they would have a protected day every week where part of that would be for their own PPA, which would be completely protected. And then the other part would be for their own either leadership, whatever role they were doing, or for their own professional development. And it's been really transformational. And the idea behind it within the policy, and the policies developed over the last 5 years, is that if you've got an appointment that needs to be taken, I mean, again, it's so difficult. You get those requests for leaves come in and you think, oh, right, this one's out because they've got dentists and you've got this, you've got that. And I said, I know that everyone has things like that to do because sometimes you just can't help it. You can't always get the Saturday morning appointment. You can't always get the 5 o'clock appointment. But if you give people that day and you say to them, you need to try and use this time, if you do need to pop out and do something, and people have really got behind that, so things like ad hoc doctor's appointments, ad hoc dentist appointments, those type of things, people now take during that time, which means we get less requests for leaves. It almost halved our 1-day ad hoc absences, those periods of time sort of just before Christmas where people are starting to flag a little bit, particularly that part after February half term to April where people just like, this is, we're getting coughs and colds and, all of that. And people almost think, right, if I get to that point in the week, I know I've only got to get to a Wednesday, for example. So I'm in for 2 days, but then I've got that rest and then I can just settle a bit and then I've got 2 days. It makes such a difference, and what it has done as default is I've managed to get a full-time teacher back in every classroom. So I don't have any job shares across the school anymore because people know if they're coming back full-time, they've got a day that they can use, for themselves a little bit as much as anything else. It just gives you that time and breathing space. And that's made a difference as well, is you're giving people that flexible working opportunity. Um, and some people have come back part-time and up their days very quickly. But yeah, it's been really transformational, I think, for, cutting down ad hoc absences, making sure people feel heard. I think that's been a big thing as well. And one of the key things I think that's come out is it's given people time to develop themselves as teachers and leaders. So I think I mentioned to you earlier, we've had in between 14 to 16 members of staff who have all completed MPQs within the last year. And those MPQs are quite research heavy. There's a lot of reading that needs to go with them. There's the assessment week. And no one wants to do that at 8 o'clock after you put the kids to bed. No one wants to do that on a Sunday where your friends might be popping up to the pub or you've got a swimming lesson to get to or whatever. But you can do that on a Thursday afternoon when you're a bit more settled and you've got time and space. And putting that time back into people's professional development, I think you get it back tenfold. When you put trust in people, it comes back in droves. And I think that's really important. Yeah. So that's where we are.
Wow. Well, I mean, the research on when staff feel that there is trust in the institution is huge, obviously, in terms of their creativity, their resourcefulness, their productivity, all these different things, elements of well-being, if you like.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're giving your teachers this day to really sort of invest in them. And what about you? What about your leaders? How are you managing with that?
So the leadership, we do exactly the same. So currently my leadership team, I've got me, there's 2 deputies, my inclusion lead, and I've got a teaching and learning lead. And we all work in exactly the same way. So we all rotate on our days. For me personally, my day always works better at the end of the week. I always find that I have to do that paperwork at the end because what I don't want to do is have that hanging over me on Saturday and Sunday, that type of thing. So I'll plan in all of my meetings with like HR and finance and all those things that I could, quite frankly, I've put off during the week. And I tend to do all of that. So I'll sign off all the order forms and do all of those things. And it also gives me, and I'm really open about this with my staff. So my little girl's 3.5. And on a Friday, it means I can take her to nursery and I can pick her up. And I make that really clear to other people that, if they've got children, that's what I expect them to do as well. If you've got a dog, I expect you to take it, go out and have a walk and take take that breather for yourself, and it's been really transformational because I think people, teacher burnout's really real. And I think and it feels more heavy and difficult at the moment. And I certainly feel that as a leader. I think, the way that, and we can talk about school funding, it's a completely separate issue, but there are a lot of really heavy decisions that we're having to make at the moment, I think, as school leaders, where it feels that you're making decisions that aren't best for the children. You're making things that are financially good decisions because you need to cut and save money. But for me, having that space and time to reflect and really look at things means that I'm not making rash decisions, and I'm giving myself that breathing space that I need as well, which I think is really important. And that's what I expect my senior leads to do as well, is to do that for themselves.
I love that. And the
Yeah.
thing that comes to my mind is I recently spoke at a conference to some head teachers, and I told them lots of stories, gave them lots of research and about what helps both them and their staff to beat the stress and the overwhelm, and some strategies. And the one thing that every single one of the feedback that I got quite a few people came and spoke to me after it, was they'd never thought of. I told them a story about a teacher, a head teacher who was really just reacting every day to all the sort of, the firefighting. And when they took one morning out every week to
Mm.
do it was actually their most valued strength, all the planning and the sort of forward thinking and all the strategic stuff. They discovered that that morning enabled them to thrive through the rest of the week in an extraordinary way. And that was the one bit that all these head teachers clung on to from my talk, interestingly. It was almost like because someone had done it and it worked, had permission. But they were saying, oh gosh, do I trust my team? Yes, I do trust my team. Yes, they would manage.
Yeah,
And there's a very, very powerful message that you're giving your staff, isn't it? About, I'm not here, but that's okay because I trust you.
absolutely. And I really think, and I think maybe it's a thing about being a head teacher. There's a big part of it, I think, where it's caught up in your own ego and your own self-importance. And actually, your school shouldn't fall apart when you're not there. And actually, I think that's a sign of actually quite poor leadership. If the school can't run without you, then you're holding everything too tightly. And
Yeah.
you are caught up, I think, in your own idea of I am the most important person in the school. And actually, in some ways, you should be the least important person in the school. And I always make it very clear that I'm always the point of escalation, not the point of initial contact, because you've got the answers yourself. And if you put freedom onto people to make their own decisions based on what's best within the remit of your policies, and I would say that as a head, the idea of if your policies are tight and your culture is right, and I think it all comes down to trust and culture. But if you've got the foundations there with your key policies that are read, that are understood, and your messaging is clear, then you should be able to, at points, you should be able to step back and say, you know what to do, and you put that back onto people. And I think from a well-being point of view, that makes a big difference as well. And I think, you know, you can't underestimate what a good culture does in a school. And I think that that's because if you've got a culture of trust, and these are our values in school as well, and we developed these as a group a couple of years ago, and our values are trust, hard work, and respect. And we expect that of our parents, we expect that of our children, we also expect that of each other and ourselves. And I think if that is your culture, then you should always be able to remove yourself slightly to think everyone knows what they're doing. And for me,
Yeah.
that lowers my stress level, because I haven't got to worry. I don't have to talk to my deputy heads, for example, about, "Well, what are you doing today? Where are we?" Because we had a meeting at the beginning of the week and everyone knows what they've got to do, and everyone stays in their lane, and we don't need to cross over and have all this miscommunication. Everyone knows what their roles are. Their roles are really clear, and then we can just get on and we can do that, and we can be strategic and move forward. And I think that makes a massive difference for people as well.
Yeah. But I would add on to what you've said about the trust, but you're also putting in a lot of investment resources into your staff developing themselves. So you're saying to them, I want you to become a better leader. I want you to invest so that you are more competent and you can climb and all of that sort of thing. So, as well as trusting them, you're investing in them so that they can have the skills so that you can move away which I guess as a head, that reduces your stress, as you say, but also it's enabling them to grow and to become the best version of them. And wow, Gustav, so we have got to just ask, how do you afford to do this?